The scalpel gleamed coldly as it sliced through the chest cavity, a living heart transplanted into another body, with the Johnson family's sinister smiles looming in the background.
No. Please.
Emily jolted upright in bed, drenched in sweat, gasping for air. Her heart pounded loudly in the stillness of the night. The same nightmare again. She clutched her chest, relieved to find her heart was still safely within her own body.
Just a dream, but what if it's a sign?
She knew that when the Johnson family adopted her from the orphanage 10 years ago, they had already checked her blood type. Her existence was meant to be a donor for Sarah, to give up her heart when the time was right. If she wanted to change this fate, today was her last chance, as it was Michael and Sarah's engagement party.
I have to act today or it's all over.
She and Sarah were the same age, yet their youths were worlds apart. Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of injustice.
Why should I be the one to suffer?
Emily walked barefoot out of her room and pushed open the door next to hers. In the dim light, her silk nightgown clung to her, both alluring and sensual. The man lying in bed had a look of struggle on his face. Emily didn't notice his distress as she slowly approached, her hand hovering in the air, hesitating.
Should I really do this? If I set up Michael, he will hate me forever.
Suddenly, the man who had his eyes closed snapped them open and grabbed her hand.
Emily!
Emily was startled, struggling to break free.
No, I can't do it. I can't scheme against Michael and Sarah like this.
It's you! I remember warning you.
Michael's eyes were filled with anger. As soon as he returned to his room, he felt something was wrong with his body. Someone must have drugged him, and he couldn't believe it was Emily.
This woman dared to plot against me now. Her cunning is terrifying.
Michael, what are you doing? I just walked into the wrong room.
Meeting his heated gaze, Emily felt her courage wane even more.
I need to leave.
But such a move only served as a greater temptation to Michael at that moment.
Your lies are not convincing. You brought this on yourself.
Michael pulled her over, trapping her beneath him.
Michael, let me go.
Let you go? Are you willing to now?
Ugh, yo.
Emily couldn't struggle at all, and could only let him ignite a fire within her. Michael's eyes were filled with anger. As soon as he returned to his room, he felt something was wrong with his body. Someone must have drugged him, and he couldn't believe it was Emily.
Emily, what have you done?
Michael, what are you doing? I just walked into the wrong room.
Meeting his heated gaze, Emily felt her courage wane even more. She wanted to leave, but such a move only served as a greater temptation to Michael at that moment.
Your lies are not convincing. You brought this on yourself.
He pulled her over, trapping her beneath him.
Michael, let me go.
Let you go? Are you willing to now?
Ugh, you.
Emily couldn't struggle at all, and could only let him ignite a fire within her. Michael's eyes were filled with anger. As soon as he returned to his room, he felt something was wrong with his body. Someone must have drugged him, and he couldn't believe it was Emily.
This woman dared to plot against me now. Her cunning is terrifying.
Michael, what are you doing? I just walked into the wrong room.
Meeting his heated gaze, Emily felt her courage wane even more. She wanted to leave, but such a move only served as a greater temptation to Michael at that moment.
Your lies are not convincing. You brought this on yourself.
Michael pulled her over, trapping her beneath him.
Michael, let me go.
A wave of shame and anger surged within her.
Let you go? Are you willing to now?
Ugh, you.
Emily couldn't struggle at all and could only let him ignite a fire within her. After being rescued, Michael's personality suddenly changed. Later, he announced in front of the elders that he wanted to be with Sarah. He gave Emily no time to react, ending their relationship unilaterally. But things didn't end there. Although he was with Sarah, he secretly wouldn't let Emily leave him, forbidding her from interacting with any other men and using various means to coerce her into being his secret lover. However, many times when he was drunk, he would hold her with deep affection, repeatedly calling her name, Emily. Emily. She thought he must love her. There must be some misunderstanding between them. Many times, Emily wanted to ask him why, but each time it ended with Michael's humiliation. Sometimes even Emily herself couldn't figure out what their relationship was. As always, Michael didn't answer her questions. He slammed the door and left. 3 days had passed, and Emily had been locked in the room. No one came to take her for the procedure, and even Michael hadn't shown up. Sometimes, while daydreaming, she wondered if Michael had said those things on purpose. Maybe he just wanted to hide her away and protect her secretly.
Sister, sister.
Emily was in a deep sleep when she suddenly felt someone shaking her at her bedside. She groggily opened her eyes to see Sarah.
Sarah? Why are you here? Are you feeling better?
Sister, don't worry about me. You need to leave. Leave now. They're going to take you for the procedure tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Sister. Why are you still in a daze? You need to go. I've already told them I won't accept your heart. I won't undergo the procedure, but they won't listen to me.
Sarah was on the verge of tears. Emily hugged her, feeling heartbroken. Sarah was the person who treated her the best in the Johnson family. Although she could be willful at times, Emily knew that Sarah truly saw her as a sister.
What about you if I leave?
I'll be fine. I've known since I was a child that I wouldn't live long. I've been prepared for this, but you can't sacrifice yourself for me, you need to go.
Sarah pushed her to leave.
Sarah, do you believe I didn't?
I believe you. I believe you would never compete with me for Michael.
Sarah.
Emily's eyes filled with tears. She never expected that the only person who believed her would be Sarah.
Sister, you need to go and never come back.
Emily took one last look at her and immediately left. She ran and ran, thinking of Sarah's face. She found herself unable to move her legs.
No, I can't let Sarah suffer like this.
As Emily reached the door, she suddenly heard Mrs. Johnson's voice inside and stopped in her tracks.
Sarah, is it really okay to let her leave?
Do you think she can escape? Michael has been delaying the heart transplant. If I don't do something, how can I push him?
Michael's eyes blazed with fury. As he staggered into his room, a sense of unease crept over him. Someone had drugged him, and he couldn't believe it was Emily.
Emily, how could you do this to me? You dare to plot against me now?
Michael, what are you talking about? I just walked into the wrong room.
Michael's heated gaze made Emily's courage falter. She tried to leave, but her movement only incited Michael further.
Your lies are not convincing. You brought this on yourself.
He pulled her over, trapping her beneath him.
Michael, let me go.
Let you go? Are you willing to now?
Ugh, you.
Emily couldn't struggle at all, feeling utterly helpless as Michael's anger consumed him. Quick! Run, her fate has nothing to do with us. In a flash, everyone was gone, leaving Emily lifeless on the ground. Sarah's hired men had fled, but she hadn't gone far. She always enjoyed watching Emily suffer from a distance, seeing her helpless and wounded. Her phone kept flashing, but she never picked it up.
Michael, if you can't even protect yourself at this point, then she really will make sure Emily is gone. This is all your fault.
Reaching out past the car window, the cool breeze felt soothing against her palm, a stark contrast to her earlier inner turmoil. She had calmed down significantly. To achieve everything she wanted, being ruthless to herself was just the first step. Sarah started the car, seemingly making a final decision. She sped down the road, the sound of horns growing louder in her ears. Until finally, she crashed and everything went silent. Doctor, doctor. An ambulance rushed in with a woman covered in blood, while a man frantically grabbed the doctor's white coat. The stretcher moved quickly, the hallway echoing with wails.
I didn't mean to. She drove right in front of me. I couldn't stop in time, so I hit her.
Calm down. Let's assess the situation first.
The truck driver had never seen such a scene before. He was just an honest man making a living through transportation, but he encountered Sarah, who seemed determined to end it all. Before Sarah was wheeled into the emergency room, another set of footsteps rushed in from behind. The scene became extremely chaotic as Michael pushed past the doctors.
Sarah, what's wrong? Wake up!
There was no time for more words as the doctors forcefully pushed him aside.
Step back if you want her to be saved.
Regaining his composure, Michael reluctantly stepped back. The nurses and doctors hurriedly pushed the stretcher into the elevator. He watched their disappearing figures, feeling a pang of guilt. When he looked up again, the tenderness on his face was gone, replaced by bloodshot eyes.
Emily, why did you push things this far?
His fists clenched, pounding against the white wall, blood seeping from his palms.
If only I had been a little earlier, just a bit sooner, Sarah wouldn't be hurt and Emily's scheme wouldn't have succeeded.
He was to blame. He should have gone to Sarah the moment she texted him. It was also his fault for not stopping his fantasies about Emily when he first realized her true nature. But things weren't that simple. Just as Sarah was being wheeled into the emergency room, another commotion arose. Michael turned to see another stretcher being pushed in, and as it passed, he recognized the familiar face lying on it.
Emily!
She was also covered in blood, and the scene looked even more severe than Sarah's. As they passed, the pungent smell of blood filled his nostrils, with large patches of dried blood staining Emily's white dress. Michael's eyes were filled with anger. As soon as he returned to his room, he felt something was wrong with his body. Someone must have drugged him, and he couldn't believe it was Emily. Michael's mind raced, trying to comprehend this betrayal.
Emily, what are you doing here? I just walked into the wrong room.
Meeting his heated gaze, Emily felt her courage wane even more.
I just walked into the wrong room.
She wanted to leave, but such a move only served as a greater temptation to Michael at that moment.
Your lies are not convincing. You brought this on yourself.
Michael pulled her over, trapping her beneath him.
Michael, let me go.
Let you go? Are you willing to now?
Emily couldn't struggle at all, and could only let him ignite a fire within her. Mrs. Johnson's face lit up with hope.
Perfect, let's go now.
Under the bright lights of the hospital room, Emily's face had a unique beauty. She was fragile, broken, and with her eyes closed, she seemed to be enduring something terrible. She tried hard to hold back, her body covered in a fine layer of sweat. Michael turned his head and saw her vulnerability, feeling a wave of emotion. Emily's fingers twitched slightly, a movement Michael noticed. It was as if she had a sixth sense, aware that something ominous was approaching her. But no one could stop it or change her fate. Emily and Sarah were both wheeled into the operating room, and the surgical lights came on again. Mrs. Johnson finally smiled with relief. However, Michael felt his heart sinking into an abyss of darkness. Emily's condition was not optimistic. Her body was already weak and severely injured. But when Mrs. Johnson presented the signed consent form for the heart transplant, the doctors had no choice but to proceed. Sarah needed a large amount of blood, all provided by Emily. Once Sarah's bodily functions began to stabilize, the doctors administered a significant amount of anesthesia to Emily. In the end, after the successful heart transplant, everyone in the operating room felt as exhausted as if they had fought a battle. Sarah was moved to a recovery room, her heart monitor showing normal readings. But when Emily was wheeled out, her heartbeat was very slow, and she needed continuous oxygen to keep her body functioning. Michael believed Emily would wake up soon. He thought a lot. Now that things had come to this point, Emily had repaid her debt to Sarah with her heart. Perhaps they could forget the past and start anew. But Emily was not so fortunate this time. Although the surgery was successful and Sarah began to regain consciousness, Emily showed no signs of improvement. Half a month passed, and she remained in a precarious state. Michael visited her several times a day, each time leaving in disappointment. With the morning sunlight, Sarah finally woke up. As she opened her eyes, she didn't see Michael by her side. She touched her chest, feeling the steady and rhythmic beating of her new heart.
Finally, Emily's heart was mine, and I will live well with it.
She raised her hand, feeling the numbness from the many 4 needles. Michael wasn't there. Since the surgery was done, Emily must be in the hospital too. Why not go and provoke her, make her feel the pain of a heartache? With that thought, she didn't hesitate.
Michael?
Stepping out, Sarah quickly spotted Michael in the next room, holding Emily's hand tightly in his. Michael's eyes were filled with anger as he returned to his room. Something was wrong with his body. Someone had drugged him, and he couldn't believe it was Emily.
Emily, what were you thinking? Walking into the wrong room, really?
Michael, I didn't mean to. It was a mistake.
Meeting his heated gaze, Emily's courage waned even more.
Your lies are not convincing. You brought this on yourself.
Michael pulled her over, trapping her beneath him.
Michael, let me go!
Let you go? Are you willing to now?
Ugh, you!
Emily couldn't struggle at all, and could only let him ignite a fire within her. Beep! A sudden honking pierced her eardrums. Someone was frantically pressing the horn. She wanted to run, but standing in the middle of the crosswalk, surrounded by traffic, she turned to see a black SUV closing in on her. Her mind went blank, and a dizzying sensation overwhelmed her. She couldn't move her feet properly. She didn't realize that when she rushed to the crosswalk, the light had already turned red. People on the sidewalk looked at her as if she were crazy. Screech! The tires screeched against the pavement, making a terrifying noise. After a long moment, the bright, hot light of a halogen lamp shone on her face. Emily raised her hand to block the blinding light and found herself still standing there, unharmed.
Friendly, are you okay?
Relieved, I'm fine.
Friendly, Miss Emily, if you have nowhere to go, you can come with me. I'm Maggie, my Chinese name is Zhang Yao. I'm currently a senior investigator in the city center. I'm very curious about the Johnson family, especially Sarah. I've discovered some things.
Maggie, only 24 years old, had a smooth career path thanks to her father, the police chief. But she hated being labeled as a privileged child. Her sharpness and keen sense of observation often made her feel something was off about Sarah. With her short, neat hair flying around, Emily looked at her, seeing a sense of righteousness that seemed even more dashing than a man's.
Hopeful, okay.
Emily agreed involuntarily, feeling her panicked heart calm down. The next day, Michael went to the hospital as usual. However, he didn't find Emily in her room. When he rushed to Sarah's room, her first reaction was fear.
Angry, Sarah, did your mother take her away?
Sad, Michael, why would I do that? How can you suspect me?
Sarah stood up abruptly. She thought she held a special place in Michael's heart, but his words hurt her deeply, making her breathing irregular.
Pleading, Michael, you have to believe me. I'm the last person in the world who wants my sister to get hurt. I'm more upset than anyone that she's missing.
Michael looked down and saw Sarah's tears. His heart softened.
Sad, I'm sorry, Sarah. I was too anxious. Emily's health hasn't fully recovered, and I'm just worried something might happen to her.
He reached out and pulled Sarah into his arms. Her steady heartbeat pressed against his strong chest. In the quiet air, Sarah's lips curled into a bitter smile. Michael, you still can't forget Emily. Even now, your first instinct is to protect her. She realized how painful it was to love someone who didn't love you back. If the person you loved had someone else in their heart, the pain you endured would be doubled. A strong sense of suffocation washed over her like a tide, her heart aching as if it would explode. Sarah feared losing Michael, and an unknown terror spread through her body.
Pleading, Michael, I love you. I really love you. Please believe me. I would do anything for you, so please don't leave me, okay?
Sad, Sarah, I owe you. I'll take good care of you for the rest of my life.
His words made Sarah even more sensitive. Look at him, speaking so earnestly. Michael said he owed her and would take care of her, but he never said I love you. Those 3 words she longed to hear remained unspoken. Today was Sarah's discharge day. Her body had mostly recovered, and she just needed some time to rest at home. Michael, heavy-hearted, took Sarah back to his place to care for her personally. Meanwhile, he sent people to search for Emily. How could a living person just vanish? But after some time, all the feedback he received indicated that Emily's whereabouts remained unknown. Michael's eyes were filled with anger. As he returned to his room, he felt something was off with his body.
Angry, someone must have drugged me. Emily, it has to be you.
Emily's courage wavered under Michael's heated gaze.
Shy, Michael, what are you doing? I just walked into the wrong room.
Angry, your lies don't convince me. You brought this on yourself.
He pulled Emily over, trapping her beneath him.
Terrified, Michael, let me go.
Unfriendly, let you go? Are you willing to now?
Sad, ugh, you.
Emily couldn't struggle and could only let him ignite a fire within her.
Maggie, there are things I saw with my own eyes. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't treat Emily this way. Her situation is her own doing.
The woman glanced at the anger in his eyes. This incredibly handsome face could make any woman fall for him with just one look. Seeing the depth of his eyes, she suddenly felt that saying anything more was useless. Perhaps only after Michael saw the contents of the USB drive would he believe her.
I was just joking with you earlier. You asked me to investigate Emily, and I did my best. The information you have now took me a lot of effort. I hope it helps.
Michael was momentarily stunned by her sudden change in attitude, his confusion gradually dissipating. He then started the car again. After dropping Maggie off, he returned to the villa. As he went upstairs, Sarah saw him and her previously calm face lit up with joy.
Michael, why did you come back so late today? I've missed you so much.
Hearing her coquettish tone, Michael wanted to laugh but couldn't muster the energy. He just patted her head.
There, I'm back now, aren't I?
With that, Sarah fell silent, both of them lost in their own thoughts, creating an awkward silence. Michael recalled Maggie's words. What she said wasn't impossible. In fact, it might be the most unexpected person close to him who was behind everything. Could the truth be that cruel? Sharing a room always has its inconveniences. When Michael came out of the shower, Sarah was already lying in bed with her eyes closed. He lifted the blanket and covered her, but she suddenly opened her eyes and wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him down. In an instant, his body fell heavily onto hers. Looking up, Michael saw Sarah's face with a sly, triumphant smile. Whether he liked it or not, she was now in his bed, and soon, this home and this man would be hers. Thinking of this, she couldn't hide her excitement. She leaned in and kissed his lips unexpectedly. The night was cool, easily igniting sparks of intimacy. But gradually, the passionate kiss turned into an outlet for frustration. Sarah could clearly feel that Michael wasn't kissing her with affection but was using her to vent his dissatisfaction. Opening her eyes, she met Michael's bloodshot eyes in the dim light. He was like a wolf hovering over her. There was no trace of desire, he was merely going through the motions. Instantly, Sarah's own desire vanished. She kept wondering, Michael, who are you thinking of right now? Is it Emily? Or is it me?
Era's first night at the Leaf family villa didn't go as she had prepared for. When she woke up the next morning, Michael was nowhere to be seen. He only saw him briefly at lunch, but his attitude towards her was indifferent, as if their relationship was just like that of ordinary people.
Whenever things got intimate, he would push her away. In truth, it was because Michael couldn't forget Emily. Even their conversations lacked emotion, with a hint of loneliness seeping through. Sarah couldn't wait any longer.
Eyes fell. Sarah's face turned pale instantly. Her hand slowly and painfully reached for a box of blades from the sink, the tool she had prepared. As the light filled the room, it cast beautiful shadows. She stood in the light, her legs weak and trembling.
Taking a deep breath, Sarah picked up the blade and, without hesitation, hurt herself. Her body went limp, collapsing onto the cold tile floor, gradually losing warmth.
It was then that Sarah realized the deepest pain was the silent kind. Without a complete scream, she only wanted to wait for Michael to appear. Slowly closing her eyes, she suddenly heard the door being pushed open. Michael rushed into the bathroom in a few strides.
Sarah!
He immediately ran over to lift her from the floor.
It was then that he clearly smelled the strong metallic scent. The crimson liquid flowed continuously from Sarah's wrist. Her face was pale, devoid of any color, like a broken doll, just a lifeless puppet. Half an hour later, Sarah had been stabilized after emergency treatment.
Sarah?
The smell of disinfectant was unpleasant, but it was nothing compared to what was in his heart. Sarah looked at Michael, her eyes filled with pain.
Michael, I feel so terrible. This heart doesn't belong to me. I owe it to my sister, I want to give it back to her.
She struggled to get up, her eyes filled with determination.
Sarah, don't do this. The heart is yours now, you need to live well.
R.S. Johnson had received news about her daughter early on, but she never expected her child to be so ruthless, willing to go to such lengths for Eichel.
She made a call, impatiently inquiring about Sarah's condition, pretending to know nothing. After some evasive answers, they were forced to return to the Johnson family home.
Michael, my daughter has sacrificed so much for you. Don't you have any response?
In the hall, Mrs. Johnson sighed heavily.
I will take good care of Sarah.
Michael frowned.
Sarah is a good child. She suffers every day, living in torment because she took her sister's heart. I don't want her to suffer anymore.
Mrs. Johnson had prepared everything, taking out an agreement.
I hope you will take responsibility for her, not just offer so-called care.
Sarah, weak and frail, saw the marriage agreement and was overjoyed, though she hid it well.
Mom, don't force Michael.
The mother and daughter put on a perfect act, complementing each other seamlessly. The man pressed Sarah's hand, signaling her to stop talking. They couldn't keep avoiding this. Since they couldn't find Emily, it was time to give Sarah a sense of belonging.
All right. I promise you, I will take care of her for the rest of my life.
Michael said, gripping Sarah's small hand tightly. None of the three spoke further, but the man's eyes showed a calmness devoid of any joyful light.
Time flew by, and the wedding day arrived. The hotel was bustling with activity. Sarah woke up early, after all, today was her most important day. She had been too excited to sleep since the night before. In the morning, Michael got everything ready and drove to the hotel. Sarah stood on tiptoe to kiss his cheek. Upon arriving at the hotel, the man's handsome profile met Sarah's admiring gaze. The makeup team began working on Sarah, while the second-floor banquet was being set up. The main hall on the first floor was where the guests would gather. The seven-star hotel had been booked entirely, showcasing their extraordinary financial power.
Keep an eye on Michael later, make sure nothing goes wrong.
The attendants nodded. Mrs. Johnson was a perceptive woman. She knew Michael didn't truly love Sarah, but she valued the union of their families' businesses. A powerful alliance, a perfect match.
Sarah finished her makeup and changed into her wedding dress, but didn't see Michael in the lounge. She lifted her gown and went out to find him.
Guests were arriving, eager to witness the couple. But Sarah couldn't find Michael anywhere. Realizing something was wrong, her heart filled with anxiety. She feared her worst thoughts might come true. They were so close, just a little bit more.
On stage, the host pulled back the curtain at the right moment, creating a romantic and touching atmosphere. Sarah was as anxious as a cat on a hot tin roof, still unable to find Michael.
Welcome the bride and groom.
The audience erupted in applause.
But then, murmurs spread among the guests as they looked at the wedding screen. The screen showed Emily standing at a hospital room door, shouting at someone inside.
You drugged him, and the heart failure was fake.
She struggled with someone inside the room, and then two women came out and restrained Emily. The guests were shocked to see that it was today's bride and her mother. The scene continued, showing a hidden alley where Sarah kicked Emily out of a car and drove away. A group of men then surrounded Emily and began to assault her. At that moment, Maggie took the stage.
A year ago, the Johnson family experienced a kidnapping incident. The injured person was Sarah Johnson.
Maggie displayed photos from her investigation, and the reporters went wild with their cameras.
What I want to say is that Sarah orchestrated the kidnapping and framed her sister Emily, accusing her of being dissatisfied with the family for using her as a donor and thus kidnapping Sarah. Sarah played her cards well. She wanted to take Emily's heart and her then-boyfriend, Michael. She used Michael's guilt to try to marry into his family. And Emily is not adopted as rumored, she is the child of the deceased Johnson patriarch's lover. Out of jealousy, Sarah's mother killed Emily's mother and altered Emily's identity.
Michael had received a call from Maggie earlier, which was why he hadn't appeared on stage. Now, standing below and listening to Maggie's words, his mind suddenly felt heavy.
These are the pieces of evidence we have, and the police have already received reports suspecting the Johnson family of tax evasion. The truth will soon come to light.
Sitting in the last row, Emily never expected Maggie to help her in this way. She slowly stood up and walked to the front, as onlookers pointed at her and whispered,
"That's her, the adopted daughter of the Johnson family."
Adopted? She's the biological daughter of the family head.
From the video, who would have thought Sarah and her mother could be so ruthless?
Sarah finally snapped out of her shock. She rushed towards Emily.
Emily, I want you gone.
Her 10-centimeter heels approached menacingly.
Enough!
Michael rushed over and slapped Sarah, causing her to stumble and fall to the ground, blood trickling from her nose, looking utterly disheveled.
Why?
You deceived me, Sarah. I will make sure you face the consequences.
The man turned, his sharp brows casting a shadow in Emily's eyes. His long-lost tenderness finally appeared, his deep features returning to their usual gentleness.
Emily, I'm taking you home.
After all the dangers had been resolved, Michael held Emily tightly and spoke these words heavily.
Emily, will you forgive the old me?
Emily, with a charming smile, saw through his ploy and deliberately responded with a teasing remark.
Let me think about it.
Michael's face instantly darkened. He glanced at her, then pressed his body down, ignoring the onlookers, and claimed a long kiss.
The Johnson family, after the scandal broke, faced widespread infamy. The company's stock plummeted, losing nearly $1 billion in just a few days, and many longtime employees resigned. With the news out, the Johnson family's status was on the brink of collapse. Mrs. Johnson's hair turned white overnight, and Mr. Johnson deeply regretted his past decisions. He never imagined that those close to him were responsible for his son's demise and his grandson's suffering. The Johnson Corporation eventually fell and was acquired at a low price by the Lee Corporation. Emily finally moved on from the past, the heavy burden in her heart lifting at last. As she thought about it, she looked down at the wedding ring on her hand, a sweet smile appearing on her face.
Glancing at the time, it was already 6:30. She wouldn't have time to prepare dinner for Michael. Sure enough, her phone rang urgently. She pulled it out, and the screen prominently displayed the word husband. The end.